All right, so with the recording starting, it is 5:04. We're going to get the meeting started with a review of the minutes from our February 10th meeting. And I am prepared to share my screen just in case you had any questions. I do have it up on the screen, and I can flip to any page or topic of discussion if any of our committee members had questions, comments, or changes.
I simply would like to motion that we accept them as presented. And hopefully we'll be following up with discussion on the people that have taken improper use of the leave. Or I should say the monies that are being paid out for unemployment.
Yep. So I have a motion.
Motion.
Right. Mrs. Gagne-Horn motion. Mr. Spilling, do you mind seconding?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So we'll stop sharing. So, Mrs. Gagne-Horn, if you don't mind, I'll table that discussion until after Mrs. Pedrick has an opportunity to present, and I'll note it on the agenda, make sure I bring it up as a topic later on in the meeting. But we can.
Thank you.
Excellent. So, as we head into another audit, right, our year's winding down, getting to year end, we are very pleased to welcome in our auditors from Weston Company, and usually it's the Mike and Amy show, right? And we're very fortunate to have Pedrick here. She's been with us for a number of years, a great asset to CVES. Each year they work with us to make sure that we're doing things appropriately, but also efficiently. And I will share one of the nice benefits of working with them, and they were here recently, and I'm sure Amy's going to talk about it. We always talk about what's going on in other BOCES, and I love that they audit other BOCES. That we can always, have a great discussion about the financial parts of those other BOCES. There's 37 of us, and they have an inside look at multiple other BOCES, and we always want to learn. We always want to know, are we doing right, number one, but are we doing it the best we can? And really that's what our auditors bring with that relationship that Christine, myself, and Dr. Davey and our whole team have with the auditors. Is we see it as a collaboration to improve what we do and to analyze what we do to make sure that we're doing it to the best of our abilities for our staff, our students, but also the taxpayers of the North Country. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Amy.
Hey, thank you, Eric. Hi, everyone. So as Eric said, you are just stuck with just me tonight. Michael had another commitment due to the change in the date. So Michael and I are both partners that work on the audit of the BOCES. We did come up and do some preliminary work at the end of April. We looked at some of our testing that we normally do. We will also be having another staff probably come up or work remotely on a single audit which is the compliance audit with some of the grants that once we determine what we're going to test. And then the bulk of the audit will take place the week before Labor Day, as it has in the past, and that's where we're scheduled right now to come out. The changes with the audit space this year, there's a new accounting pronouncement that has come out, and that's called GASB 84, and that's in regards to the trust and agency fund and any scholarship funds in your schools or BOCES. So that's going to change this year. Some of where the BOCES are recording some activities may go into the governmental funds, may go into what we're calling a new custodial fund. And Michael and I did work with Christine a little bit and had some discussions, and Eric, on the things you have right now and where they may be moved to. So it's really not a change in anything you're doing business-wise, BOCES-wise. It's a change in accounting and where things are going to be recorded. So our financial statements, when we go over them come September, October, are going to look a little bit different, and we'll go through all those in detail when we do go through that financial statement. But that is the big change this year. And although it doesn't sound like it's a big thing, it actually is a pretty big undertaking in terms of the logistics on the business office and in terms of changing some coding and account structure. So it is a heavier lift for the business office this year. Other than that, there's nothing significantly changing Going forward for 2022, we're going to be looking at leases, and that might be something big that will be on the front for the BOCES and how leases are recorded. But once we get more information on that, we'll obviously work with Christine and Eric on that as well. But as Eric said, our firm audits, we audit 5 BOCES, 5 of the 37, and we audit about 26 school districts. So, you know, we're in contact with a lot of different business officials, BOCES, to kind of be able to see what's going on in the industry and best practices. And it does kind of help with the discussions as we go along with the BOCES and with management. So this meeting is for me to tell you about the audit process, but it's also your chance to tell me if there's any areas of concern that you may have that you would like us to focus on. We obviously, of course, will look at all the funds. We will look at the extra classroom activity funds as we do and we have in the past. As far as the compliance audit yet, we are not sure what we will be testing. In the past, we would look at student financial aid in depth. That may change. We might be looking at something else as the dynamics of the federal funds are changing. We might be able to look at school lunch this year. So we're going to kind of take a look and see where we fall with that. But is there any areas of concern, anything that you, the audit committee members, would like us to take a look at while we're out there?
I don't have any real concerns. I finally made it in. You know, in the past, we've looked at, I know that there was concern about classroom activities funds. I really don't have a concern with that. Just really kind of just how we have done it in the past, you know, it's fine with me.
And when we do come and do the audit, we do a risk assessment. We look at the areas where their highest risk is. We focus our audit work specifically more in depth on those areas while also taking a broad overlook on all the areas of the audit. Yeah. But, and yes, the extra classroom activity funds, we do test those. At BOCES, they are smaller, but they do have a different dynamic because the kids aren't always there. And especially, you know, with COVID and with the pandemic, things are changing. Controls may be a little bit different. So we're obviously going to take a look at those as well to see, you know, if anything changed during the year with the pandemic and with regards to extra class and yes. Yeah.
I'm interested in the adult education funds and the uncollectible accounts, or if that has changed this year because of the pandemic, and what's happening there. That's of concern to me. And then also any federal funds that are coming in, what's going to be put into place to make sure that they're expended properly, because I hear there's a whole lot of conditions that are still being written. So
yeah, that's something that's happening at all the, I mean, not even just schools and BOCES, but with all this federal fund that's coming out due to COVID and due to the pandemic, they're throwing this money out, but they're not firming up all the requirements before they give it. So it's a moving target that we will absolutely be looking at when we come out to see what the requirements are and whether the BOCES is in compliance with those. Yes.
I have all faith. I just wanted to bring it up, but I have all faith in you and Mike that you'll do that. It's just going to be an interesting ride, I think.
Mm-hmm. So, hey, Linda,
right, Eric?
Oh, Mr. Spelling, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. Hey, Linda, when you were saying claims and whatnot, were you thinking about kind of on the insurance side that due to COVID, a lot of people have pushed off their insurance, you know, potential healthcare engagement, and therefore there could be a waterfall of claims coming next year, and therefore we have a spike in that, or is that something else?
No, something else. It's the unemployment benefits that I probably misspoke when I started, but the unemployment benefits that we feel are fraudulent. And
yeah, there's a lot out there. Yeah, 94% over in Vermont, and then my wife even got a claim against her, so she had to from that. So yeah, you're totally right in looking into that.
Yeah, and you know, excellent, you know, points, and thank you for the feedback, and thank you for all being here as well. And for the stimulus monies, keeping a close watch on that. The BOCES do not receive much stimulus monies. The only stimulus monies that as I understand, we'll be receiving is related to our adult ed programs. But compared to our school districts that have received a lot more, which is primarily distributed on behalf of their Title I funding structure. So some of our districts have gotten hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars. You know, another one district that doesn't receive a lot of any Title I received just a pittance, you know, like 15,000 or 10,000, and that's it compared to hundreds of thousands and millions. And then the other piece is, you know, perhaps Mr. Bell, we can give a brief update on some of those unemployment fraudulent claims, because we even have had some of our administrative staff recently identified under that process too. So.
Dr. Davey, how about with the monies, you know, the role that BOCES played with remote learning and the infrastructure associated with that? Is there any direct line of funding that you can get from that, or is that all through the districts?
Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Davey.
Go ahead, Amy. I'll let you and Eric jump in first, and then I'll follow up.
As far as I know, there is no direct line of BOCES to receive those funds. And as Dr. Davey said, the funds that are coming in from the federal stimulus is smaller. The BOCES does have some, but it's not as significant as the school districts. It's a lot of the windfall is coming to the school districts, and especially in as we're seeing now, the more that's coming out and the changing of the regulations. But
Gotcha. Thank you.
Right, and Mr. Bell, I don't know if you want to add anything. I mean, we do qualify for E-rate and some of the funding through that model, but Mr. Bell, I may just ask you to kind of weigh in on that as well.
Yeah, I think you guys have nailed it on the stimulus money. It's very minor for CVES, but it's making an impact on our adult education programming. It's helping some students with tuition and saving money there, and the affordability of, you know, going for adult education. So for us, it's a lot of it'll be using that fund to promote into the future. You know, the original stimulus money that came in was impacting our LPN program, and really we didn't have time to promote it. It was more like, all right, you've had it, you know, we went through the pandemic, and now you need to support that program, and you have a couple months to do it. So it wasn't like a more promotional, where this round 2 and 3, we're hopeful that when we get more details, like Amy mentioned, we can use it to help promote the programming for our community to get more opportunity to attend adult education classes at a more affordable rate, potentially. So that's our hope. We wait to see further guidance on it.
Mr. Bell, when you were talking there, it kind of reminded me, it's almost a secondary type of thing where when you talk about promotion, so the monies are coming to the districts, but then it's going to be really important to be marketing to those districts to say, hey, here are the services that BOCES has. So when you pivot to spend, think of us when you're spending that, right? So it's mainly, we should be right in their face with some good marketing stuff to say, hey, think of us for that.
Yeah, twofold there. The money flowing to the BOCES can help promote our adult education courses that are paid by the participant, not by the district. And then from the district money perspective, we've been on a hitting the road, running, knocking on doors, trying to support our CSOs and their needs and meet their needs, and our business officials as well. But also having the conversation to say, you're going to get pennies on the dollar if you spend federal money through the BOCES. If you can reallocate some of your general fund money to those BOCES expenditure lines, spend it through your general fund, get the aid back. Some of our districts have over 80% aid ratios, so don't spend federal money and only get 20 cents on your dollar of federal money. So we've worked closely with them to try to work through their budget process. So we're ready and willing to support them with whatever needs they have. With the challenge of the aid, we want to make sure they're maximizing that and putting their money. We have the same conversation, Mr. Spilling, about capital projects. You know, some of our districts have a 90% aid ratio on building aid. And we tell them, don't spend $1 and only, you know, you're saving really 10 cents, right, to your taxpayers of $1 of federal money. So we had that same conversation with our districts and trying to help them, guide them to use your general fund money on BOCES, use your general fund money on capital projects, use your federal money to cover some of those general fund expenditures.
Thank you. Appreciate the answer.
And one of the things that kind of was I've overlooked a little bit in terms of in talking to you about the school lunch program. That's one of the areas where you've gotten a lot of funds because of the pandemic and the change in the structure of the school lunch program and being able to offer the free reduced to all students, where in the past there was always the issue of it being their second meal or whatever, and their home district has to provide services. So that having gone up so much is putting that more on our radar for our compliance audit with single audit, but that's really all, a lot of those funds are up because of the pandemic and the extra money associated with those too.
Gotcha.
Great point there, Amy, and we're able to take advantage of economies of scale, right? When we just feed our special education population in Mineville and in Plattsburgh, that's a limited number. As soon as we realized that we're having full day CV Tech students on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, first we said, oh boy, we got a problem here, because that's a lot of kids, right? That's 300 plus kids a day. Breakfast, lunch, we're going to be feeding that. We didn't feed before. But it also was, okay, how can we maximize revenue, number one, and reduce our expenditures, or at least be efficient with our expenditures? And what ended up happening was a beautiful relationship of educational opportunity and taking advantage of educational opportunity with a culinary program, CV Tech students working, and putting the student opportunity to use, but also saving bunch of expenditures in the process to turn a profit. And we're projecting a profit this year because of that. So great opportunities presented to us. And it's one that we may never get again, but it's been great for students, and it's been great for our bottom line in our cafeteria.
Nice.
So I think as far as the audit goes, that's pretty much it for us in terms of the procedures are pretty much the same. The process is the same. These are the areas that we're going to be focusing on. But again, if there's any other areas or anything else that anybody thinks about after the fact, Christine, Eric, and Dr. Davey, they all have our contact information, and we're more than happy to get back in touch with you guys at any point in time prior to the audit or during the audit.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else for Amy, we will let her go. And you are back on October 13th to meet with this committee to let them know what your findings were, and further discussion on the audit process, and any recommendations moving forward for improvement. So we look forward to working with you this summer. I got a little bit of a taste of what our construction's like around here. So thank you for your patience. Really appreciate it. And when you come back in August, we're going to be asking for a little more patience. Not sure where we'll end up and where we'll be, but we're going to find space for you.
We can be flexible. That's not a problem. So thank you both. Thank you all very much. And,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
And I'll just offer before we move on, I want to say thank everyone for attending this evening. I know we did reschedule. We moved it just because of the board meeting being in Mineville. So it was one of those unintended consequences when we normally would have met before our board meeting here. And to have everyone travel down earlier and so on and so forth, we felt that it was a little bit easier to try to reschedule and just do it virtually. So thank you for your flexibility, but to our board members, thank you for being adjusting well and being here this evening, and it worked for our Weston Company auditors as well. So we appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Davey. I'd like to go into the next, let's call it a new agenda topic of unemployment. There was a question raised. I asked to table it. And now I'd like to give an update on unemployment at CVES to the audit committee and follow up to our discussion about reserves and our unemployment reserve. So two pieces, there's a couple pieces to this. I'll start with claims that were fraudulent. So Dr. Davey had mentioned that we had a significant number of fraudulent claims, which in the fraudulent ones we're talking about are where the individual did not file the claim with the New York State Department of Labor. This was done by an anonymous person under the name and social security number of the individual. And we've seen a significant uptake in this and across all districts in the North Country. And for us, as of today, we're up to 44 fraudulent claims on our employees that was submitted to the Department of Labor. And how we find out about it is paperwork gets sent to us to verify their employment with us. And the first thing we do when those come in is we pick up the phone and call the person. And they typically will tell us, or It's about 50-50 now. When I start talking about the other side, they'll typically tell us, I did not file that claim, this is fraudulent, and we walk them through the steps to take. And then we also report it as part of our job. We report it to the Department of Labor immediately that it is a fraudulent claim. That tends to stop it. They have been good in responding to us and our report and our feedback from our employees. And this goes back, I think our original one was early January that it came through, our first fraudulent one for an employee. It has stopped it at that point, and our employees have been successful in not having any other issues or money paid out. So that's the one piece of it, which is the fraudulent claims, which were not filed by our employees. The other side of it are what could be deemed fraudulent claims, but I'm not going to deem it that. I'm going to deem it as unemployment claims from our employees or past employees that have been submitted to the New York State Department of Labor since this pandemic. So I'm going back to March of 2020. We've had 55 claims that have come in. We have challenged all 55 claims that were submitted to the New York State Department of Labor. These claims were approved by the Department of Labor. They were paid out, and the employees or former employees did apply for it. We disagree with their application and eligibility for unemployment, and we have challenged those. To date, so now we're over a year later. Some of the payments have stopped, I will say that, or almost all the payments, the great majority of them have stopped. But as far as going back and retroactively denying them, 2 of those have happened. So the New York State Department of Labor has said, yep, those are denied, and they went out to the employee and said, yep, those are incorrect. CVS, you're right. 3 of them have been confirmed. 3 instances were confirmed. Yes, they are eligible for it. And I'll give you 2 instances of why. So one is we had a sub-custodian who was working January, February, March, pandemic hits. We stopped having the sub-custodian come in because our buildings were closed. So we fought it to an extent. That one was legitimate. It was a short period of time because that employee ended up getting hired full-time by a school district. The other scenario was in June of 2019, we laid off an employee. It was a temporary employee, wasn't working out. Instead of renewing them, having them come back in the new year, we didn't renew their temporary appointment. That person moved on to another school district in September, was working September of 19, and in the spring of 20 was laid off. And since it was within a year and a half of employment at CVES, we were still on the hook for some of their unemployment funds. So that's just a couple of examples of the 3. The third one, I don't know off the top of my head what it was, but I think it was similar to the sub-custodian piece. The other outstanding 50 are still in the works of we are fighting. Now, financially, what are we on the hook for? So after our discussion last meeting, we went back to see what were our unemployment bills. So what have we paid to unemployment? And I have a total of over $40,300 that we paid for unemployment cost to the New York State Department of Labor. So that financial impact is pretty significant, right? Especially since we're challenging all of them. Well, part of it was the federal government covered a large portion of that cost. So our true cost would have been, we believe it was $80,000. Federal government covered 50% of those claims since it was during the pandemic. The other 40,000, New York State actually just came through. They've reduced our bill in April, and they gave us a credit. So we actually have a $38,000 credit from New York State plus a $2,000 deduction to basically hold us harmless. We have 0 unemployment cost. So from us, it's not a financial impact. However, like I explained, last meeting, I said, we're expecting New York State money to come through. I'm telling you right now, it just came through on our April bill. We are still fighting all of those claims. We are actively pursuing them under Dr. Davies' direction. We are fully pursuing and pushing against them, and they're, in our opinion, they are inappropriate, and our employees are not eligible for that money. And it's important that the Department of Labor gets that correct. So we are actively pursuing the other 50 claims still. So that's the update from our last meeting. Are there any?
If we are, correct, will that money be paid back by the employees who received it fraudulently or not?
Typically, yes. How the state's going to handle it during a pandemic, they haven't done anything really typical, you know, since the pandemic started. So that could change what their reaction is. Typically, the answer to your question would be yes, though.
And Mr. Bell,
Because if they're not employer hired, they're gonna do it, so.
yeah, we've even had some conversations, and I know, Mr. Spelling, you do have some connection across the lake in Vermont. It's my understanding, and we've just kind of talked about it in passing, that Vermont is not accepting online unemployment application claims anymore. You have to actually be in person to file. So they've actually taken a more proactive approach than New York State has. But just, I don't know if there's any other thoughts about things that the state or others have done.
I don't have any other updates other than they just, like you said, they're locking things down like that in person, because the 94% fraudulent rate was just crazy.
Yeah, thank you for sharing too.
Excellent. So I am going to move to the next agenda item, reserve plan and June 2021 reserve funding. So as part of this, we've discussed our reserve plan. We discussed our reserves last meeting. We went into quite a bit of detail. Now we're winding down our year. Where do we want to target our funding? Last meeting, we talked a lot about unemployment, right? You know, we can tell you today, we don't have a financial impact on that unemployment reserve. So that's off the table, right? That's no longer a focus of ours. So we can limit our focus now to really 2 reserves that we want to target funding. And then 1 reserve that we know is getting funding due to the sale of PAI equipment. So coming from this meeting, you know, the next steps is at our June board meeting, asking the board to allow an allotment up to a certain threshold, dollar threshold, which we'll discuss tonight, for those reserves to fund them by the end of the year. And that buys us time until June 30th. Christina's our treasurer. We'll analyze our surpluses, where we're at, and then Dr. Davey makes the ultimate decision at that point, up to the board threshold that they've approved. So CTE equipment reserve, like we discussed, that'll have the funding from our sale of PAI equipment. We're expecting that to be in the range of like $775,000. Funding in that reserve puts us right around that $800,000 mark. So very strong position to go forward. As part of our reserve plan, we do have discussion in there to change the methodology in that reserve funding, and we've discussed it here at this committee a few times. That has been tabled with the pandemic and everything going on. We've hit the pause button on that, working with our districts. That we leave in our reserve plan, because we want to pick that up as an organization down the road to say we need to adjust this funding methodology to the appropriate amount. We don't feel that, especially during the pandemic and then this sale of PAI equipment, that's an appropriate time to broach a conversation with our school districts, their boards, their superintendents, their business officials. So very positive news for our CTE equipment reserve. A strong position that we've never been in that reserve. The other 2 I want to talk about is our TRS reserve. So our TRS reserve was one that we created 2 years ago. We've had 2 years of funding in it. It is limited to 2% of your certified staff member salaries. So anyone that's in the TRS system, it's limited to 2% of those salaries. Our salaries are close to $10 million. We look at it as 2% of those salaries is $190,000. So 2 years of funding, we're actually at $391,000. If we had another year at about 190, puts that reserve about $580,000. Realize that it takes 5 years to fully fund that reserve. We should be, as an organization, trying to fund that every single year due to the limitations that the law puts on it. So it doesn't allow the board to go above 2% in any one year. Could we spend more than 2% in 1 year? Absolutely. The board may be put in that place where when we set a budget, the board may have to use more than 2%. So So I think this should be a topic of conversation every year with the board to really focus on this reserve, make it a high priority to put the 2% in, because we are capped every single year. Then the last one is our employee benefit accrued liability reserve. We're analyzing where's our liability at for the end of the school year. We don't have that yet. That's part of our audit process. We work with Amy and Mike on that. We give them what the recommendation is. They review that liability through and through. Again, it's those post-employment employee benefits liability, but it's not for the health insurance. So it's not for the health insurance premiums in retirement. The biggest driver of this is the sick leave buyouts that happen at the end of employment. And through the negotiation process to get contributions for health insurance and retirement, we did incentivize that transition of our teachers union, our CVES United Professionals, by putting in language for a sick leave buyout at the end of their employment. So that has increased our liability. And as of June of 2020, we're at 1.65 million of a liability. Our reserve to cover that liability, which we're allowed by law to have, is at about $600,000. So we're about $1 million underfunded in that reserve. So if funds are available, this has to be really the next priority or target to fund, because as staff retires, this reserve is going to cover those costs of sick leave payouts as they happen. So the recommendation, at this time for this committee to consider, we'd love to say, right, consider up to $1 million, but we're not going to have that type of funding this year. We know already that's a significant amount of money, and it wouldn't be financially prudent of us to say, take the big bite of that, take it all now. We need to be strategic in this and do it over time, which the board has. Over time, last year, I think we put $150,000 into that reserve. This year, we're recommending taking a bigger chunk than that $150,000 and asking for up to $400,000. Will be the request and recommendation of the board, and it's all going to depend upon where do we land with our surpluses at the end of the year to determine, can we do that? Is it the right time? Is it appropriate? And maybe it's not, and then we go to that conversation again next year. Where do we land? How much did we put into it? And let's continue to have these conversations. So that's the approach that we'd like to take going into the June meeting. Slight changes to the reserve plan would just be updating those estimated balances at the end of the year to say our EBLR reserve would be at 1 million of the $1.6 million liability. Again, that has to be updated from our audit. And then our TRS reserve to be about that $580,000 mark in that reserve. Any questions, comments on reserve plan funding?
Makes a lot of sense, Eric.
Thank you for the support, and again, we'll continue to be strategic and as financially responsible as we can in planning long term. And this reserve plan, I think, is a strong one, and look forward to working with Dr. Davey and the board to see what we can do to fund at the end of the year.
Right, and just so that if the board recalls, and to kind of bring it home in terms of especially the CTE reserve, we did receive the $1.5 million. So with that being said, approximately half of that has been strategically spent during the year to replace needed equipment, long-term deferred updates. For example, one of our biggest purchases was what was for the CDL tractor, and that program has a waiting list and a waiting line to be able to have the CDL drivers. And not only that, plus the tractor plus the trailer, but those are some big ticket items that we had for many years been deferring, and half the time our program wasn't able to operate because the tractor was being fixed. So it was one of those things where we were limping along and we're able to purchase a really well-regarded vehicle to be able to provide that service to our districts and to our adult students. So I think it's done with a lot of forethought and following the plan that's been established over the years. This was not something where they said, unleash the wallet. It was, this is a plan that's been in place for years. And originally, if you will recall, and Mr. Spilling, you were even on the board then as well, we had anticipated receiving, approximately, a couple $100,000 for 2 years from Assemblyman Jones. That money, unfortunately, never did arrive. That was when the pandemic hit. So, we did have some strategic purchases for that money as well. I think it was 125 each year is what I believe the recommendation had been, and it was going to be a total of 250. Unfortunately, that has not come to pass, but we're fortunate to be able to, purchase the equipment to help us really maintain our programs for the future, and what very much needed, but also very well organized and detailed and planned. And that's been part of our strategic planning process too, is to really have a thoughtful plan in place. So just to kind of reinforce that as part of our discussions as well.
With what's happening, again, it's been on the news of the shortage of drivers, etc. Has there been any thought to reaching out to some of these trucking companies and perhaps trying to get a partnership where we would have them supply some of their trucks, or have them, expand the training, provide funding for us to do what we need to do to expand the program, since there is such a shortage?
Mark, you're muted.
Yeah, geez, I only do this 1,000 times a day. There was one partnership that was in place, and it was with Casella. So there's actually, on some of the Casella trucks, there's CV Tech ads or associated notes, that really a display to say that they're in partnership with us as well, and that they'll help with the CDL, and you can have a long-term career, getting it started through CV Tech with a CV Tech driver, CDL driving school. So I think that's the note. That was the first one that happened this year. I know we shared some pictures in the trans at one point, but I think that was primarily it at this point from where we are, from what I recall.
I think we should try to pursue some of the, of course, I used to know who some of these companies were, and I don't know who's here, but for example, I was always under the impression Xflow had a good deal of industry, plus some of the local, the gas companies. I mean, they need drivers. So if they need drivers, we would be doing them a service, and they'd be doing us a service to join a partnership and get this going.
And I know it's a great point, and I know Mrs. Friedman's been working on it with some of the CV Tech advisory committees as well. So that's definitely something that I think we'll continue to work on.
Thank you for that. Christine Myers did have to get off. Her system was not working. She was having major technical difficulties. She was not being quiet intentionally. She could not get her microphone to work. So she apologized for that. She did send me a message and wanted me to share that with the group. So we don't have an agenda item for this because really it was a no update type of situation with our state comptroller's audit. So they've been bouncing around, not really focusing on our audit. They came back to our audit for a very brief period of time, and they wanted to work on site. So as you know, we've shuffled around. I'm in a temporary office now. I'll be moving to another temporary office in 2 weeks. All of our management services staff are moving out by June 1st for construction in this space. We explained to the auditors what was going on. We said, it's going to be tight. We can put you in our kitchen area. We're going to make space for you. It'll be fine. And then we told them about the moves, and we said, we're going to make space for them in our main campus, and they just have to move 3 or 4 times while they're here. After hearing all of the stuff that's going on here, they said it would be too much disruption for them, and that they were better off just giving us time to do what we got to do over the moves and everything going on, and they could have some consistency if they came back in September. So their management office made the decision to hold on our audit, and they're going to come back in September when we move into our new facility, and they'll continue the audit then. So that's the situation we're in with our state comptroller's audit. They were working on a New York State employee retirement system as part of their audit. So every audit they do, they review for the retirement system, which is overseen by the comptroller. So they do a very thorough, in-depth review of all employee retirement, so our non-certified staff, all of them, all of their hiring, declinations, contribution rates, years of service credit. They do a full review of that. They may be able to wrap that up. So we may get an interim report on any findings they'd have for the retirement system. But as far as our audit of our BOCES by the comptroller's office, that is on hold until September. So October, we hopefully will have an update for you on how things are going.
And hopefully we'll be meeting at our new conference center at that point.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
We do have a next meeting. It's scheduled for October 13th. Like I said, that'll be a very important one to meet with our auditors and follow up. We typically, I believe, we meet with our claims auditor and our payroll auditor that same day. So a very in-depth dive on how the audit go, but also looking at what are our weekly review processes with our internal auditors, our payroll auditor and our claims auditor at that time as well. So hopefully we'll see you there in our new conference center, like Dr. Davies said. Anything else from the committee? Thank you for being here, and I do need a motion.
Motion to adjourn, although I do want to thank you all first for keeping us honest and on track and spending our monies wisely. So, and after that, I say motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, see you tomorrow night, hopefully.